Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Our community is tired of feeling unsafe, and it's time to turn the tables on criminals who are placing this community at risk.
More deadly violence, a woman killed in Surrey, and a plea from investigators as the gang war escalates. Also,
the safety of not only our own people, but of the general public became too big a factor.
Barred on the beach, the PNE, more summer casualties of COVID-19, and
they're an important group that we do want to get protected as soon as we can.
12 and up. Health Canada approves the Pfizer vaccine for adolescents.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Another deadly shooting in Metro Vancouver. It's the 5th shooting in 5 days.
This time, a young woman has died. Dan Burrett joins us live with more tonight. So what do we know about the victim, Dan?
Mike, she is 20 years old and police say she was shot and killed inside her own home. Surrey RCMP say they went to check a report of a dropped 911 call just before 9 last night near 161A Street near 97th Avenue. Then a shots fired call came in. Police found the victim in her townhouse. She was rushed to hospital and she later died. Officers arrested a man in his 20s soon after they got there. They've dealt with him before.
He may have gang ties, and we're still working to solidify those. Our victim, our 20-year-old victim, was not known to police, and we're still trying to determine the nature of their relationship and if any.
Dan, as we've said, this is the 5th shooting in the Lower Mainland in recent days. A lot of people pretty nervous. So what are police doing to calm fears? 5
acts of violence, 5 days in a row, Anita. Some of it in very public places, like in front of malls, twice. From Friday to Tuesday, 5 people were shot across Metro Vancouver, 3 of them now killed, including a corrections officer, a 19-year-old man, and now that 20-year-old woman. Police say several of these attacks appear to be targeted and may be linked to gangs. In Surrey, where 2 people have now died, the RCMP says it is not business as usual. More officers are stopping cars and checking in with known gang members and associates and patrolling transit hubs and shopping areas. For those in gangs, police have a blunt message.
Your life does not have to end prematurely on a mortuary slab. You can exit the gang life through the CFSU End Gang Life program. You don't have a choice. The recent violence has shown us your life is in danger. The only power you have now is to decide how it ends. Contacting police now is your way out.
Mounties in Surrey are also asking people to please report anything suspicious they see or hear. Sergeant Sturko says their community is fed up, feeling unsafe. Anita, Mike?
All right, Dan, thanks very much. And a little later, Anita is speaking with someone who works with families and youth involved in gang activity. She'll shed some light on what's really happening. That's at about 6:30 tonight.
The fight over old-growth logging on Vancouver Island has escalated. New video tonight from the Ferry Creek area that shows contractors lashing out at protesters. And a warning, some of the language is disturbing, racist, and offensive.
We've had enough. You and your f***ing TPs. You can f*** around with Teal-Land. You don't f*** around with us. You'll f*** over today. Those guys might not do anything, but we f***ing will.
Protesters claim one of their own was knocked to the ground by a contractor. RCMP say they had not received a complaint about the assault, but are now actively investigating and looking to speak with any victims. The forest is being logged through a partnership between Western Forest Products and the Huey First Nation. Now an internal investigation is happening, and harvesting in the area has been put on hold with a promise to try to de-escalate the situation. They've also hired a special advisor to review the incident and make recommendations in accordance with First Nations sacred principles. Well, kids aged 12 and up have now been approved to get the Pfizer COVID vaccine.
Hannah Thibodeau has more on Health Canada's decision and what it means for young people.
This is the first vaccine authorized in Canada for the prevention of COVID-19 in children.
It's a major milestone. The Pfizer vaccine is now approved to give to kids 12 and older.
Approximately 20% of cases of COVID-19 in Canada have been reported in people under the age of 19.
Even though younger people are less likely to experience serious side effects of COVID-19, there are cases.
It's not an insignificant number of kids that are getting sicker, especially with the new variants.
The vaccine will also help stop the spread to friends and family and have implications on schooling.
It's going to be much safer, and we don't have to worry as much about opening and shutting.
Provinces moved quickly.
By this coming Monday, every single Albertan over the age of 12 will be eligible to receive a COVID-19 vaccine.
Plans are in development to ensure first dose of vaccine before the end of the school year.
The plan would be to start the vaccinations in schools, the first dose, and then have the second dose administered before a return to school date in September.
These students at this Winnipeg school are keen to get the shot.
Yeah, I want to go out, yeah. We always just hang out and stuff, so it's always, we have to get it, right? So just to keep everyone safe and us safe too.
Pfizer and Moderna are now doing clinical trials on 5 to 11-year-olds, and a submission for approval to Health Canada could be made as early as September. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Yarmouth, Nova Scotia.
And now with this decision, vaccinating young people will soon be part of BC's immunization plan.
We are absolutely planning on integrating that into our program. We're working out how do we do that and how do we do it in the most efficient way possible. So yes, there's lots of possibilities, including making sure we can get that done prior to end of school this year.
Fewer than 300,000 people will be added to the vaccination plan as a result of the approval of youth. But Henry says this shouldn't impact the province's plan of getting everyone their first dose by the end of June, nor should it interfere with the rollout of second doses.
No new COVID-19 deaths to report tonight, and the lowest daily case count in BC since March. 572 new cases as our curve continues to bend down. 481 people in hospital, 161 in intensive care. And on the vaccine front tonight, grocery workers in the Fraser and Vancouver coastal health regions are now eligible for the shot.
Yesterday's announcement for both the Fraser Health Authority and for Vancouver Coastal Health was one of the biggest senses of relief that our membership have felt in over 15 months, making them safer, their families that they live with when they go home from work safer, and their communities and anyone they interact with, because they're interacting with thousands of people a month.
Across BC, 33,000 doses have been administered since yesterday. In total, more than 1.8 million people have received a first dose. And we now know where police road checks will be set up in BC as part of COVID-19 travel restrictions. They'll be at Highway 1 in Boston Bar, Highway 3 in Manning Park, Highway 5 at the Old Toll Booths, and Highway 99 in Lillooet. A provincial order limits travel between 3 regions. Commercial vehicles are exempt. People traveling for essential reasons through those areas can expect delays.
And more popular summer activities are now casualties of our pandemic. The PNE and Bard on the Beach canceled.
As Joel Ballard reports, organizers of several cultural and tourist attractions say they just couldn't take the chance in case of further restrictions.
The mini donuts, the rides, the concerts, all staples of many Metro Vancouverites summers. But not this year. The PNE canceled for the second summer in a row.
It is heart-wrenching for us to have to tell people that this won't happen.
Thousands of jobs gone. Given the current health orders, the PNE says it can't host big enough crowds to justify the cost and risks further burying the organization in debt.
And at some point, as a not-for-profit, it becomes insurmountable.
The summer staple now faces $18 million of debt.
Where to the Pilgrims Lodge, I do beseech you.
Across the city, the curtain is dropped on another legacy cultural attraction, Bard on the Beach.
The mystery of the pandemic, of the virus, was just finally too much. The safety of not only our own people, but of the general public became too big a factor.
The cancellations are the latest in a long line of scrapped in-person events. The Celebration of Lights, the Vancouver Folk Festival, the International Children's Festival, all gone. Many are facing a second summer without their main source of revenue. Can they survive?
We'll be back. I'm always concerned about financial stability, because when you're missing $4.5 million of box office, that's a serious number.
Thanks to donors, sponsors, and different levels of government, Gaze is confident they'll make it through. But things aren't as upbeat at the P&E, which is owned by the City of Vancouver, but operates as its own not-for-profit.
Because of our unique corporate structure, we have not been able to access a single dollar of COVID relief grants.
With its debt rising, it has now asked the province for an $8 million grant. In a statement, the province says all three levels of government will need to work together to find a positive step forward for this iconic institution, and pointed to the BC budget, which has earmarked $100 million to support anchor attractions in BC. But there's been no word on when and how it will be spent. Of course, the P&E hopes for a piece of that pie, but with so many organizations also hungry, the question becomes whether there's enough to go around. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Okay, while there's still uncertainty over summer restrictions in BC, transmission is on a downward curve. The province's rolling average has been going down for weeks.
As Justin McElroy reports, experts believe that number could drop even further, meaning you may still be able to have some fun.
Large festivals and events this summer in British Columbia may be cancelled, but your smaller plans may not have to be. At least that's talking to some of the experts who have been tracking this pandemic for the last year. They say there's two key pieces of evidence to look for that give optimism. The first is what's happening already. Case counts are dropping quite quickly throughout British Columbia, down about 30% over the last 3 weeks. And the second is the pace of vaccinations and seeing what has happened in other countries where more than 50% of people have already gotten at least one dose, specifically Israel and the United Kingdom. Their cases are so low that restrictions are lessening, and we're still not seeing a rise and an increase in those countries, giving lots of optimism that things could be a lot different in BC in just a couple months' time.
I do think that the signs are good for August. With increasing number of Pfizer vaccines coming, the recent decision that vaccines can be administered to those that are 12 to 15, looking at other regions and seeing, okay, how are they faring when they get to those levels of vaccination that we should be getting to in mid-June. And so far, the signs are good.
Of course, there are things that modelers are looking at in BC and beyond. One is whether new variants come and are more resistant to vaccines than we've seen so far. The other is what evidence there is of less efficiency in the vaccines the further away you get from 2, 3, 4 weeks in the future. It's something we don't have too much data on right now. However, looking at the numbers in British Columbia, you may not be able to go to Playland this summer, but you might be able to spend plenty of time in your backyard with friends. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
A martial arts studio in Kelowna has been shut down for not following public health orders. The locks at Flow Academy were changed today by interior health officers. The owner was offering indoor classes and blocking entry for police and health officers. Flow Academy also said it wouldn't give memberships to people vaccinated against COVID-19. The studio had been operating without a business license since March. An unlikely creature was spotted on the edge of Gastown this afternoon. This black bear was caught strolling around the train tracks at the edge of the city. Vancouver police say it was noticed near the P&E heading west. The Conservation Officer Service responded and tranquilized the bear. Best guess is he wandered into town by accident. The Conservation Service said the wayward animal is doing just fine and it's being taken back to the woods.
See that very often. And 2 cougars have now been killed by conservation officers after a woman was attacked yesterday.
Relocation and translocation was not an option for these 2 animals, as the risk to the public is simply far too great.
It happened on the woman's property west of Agassiz. The big cats were found less than 15 meters from where that attack happened. Officers say it was unprovoked and predatory. The woman's recovering in hospital from injuries to her head, face, and arms.
BC's money laundering inquiry is recalling a former gaming minister over inconsistencies in his earlier testimony. CBC News reported last week that Rich Coleman had contradicted himself on the witness stand. He told the ongoing inquiry that a 2011 CBC News investigation into suspicious transactions in casinos was something that would have worried him. But back in 2011, Coleman told CBC he did not agree with the concerns raised by then head of the RCMP's Proceeds of Crime Unit. Coleman is back on the stand May 14th.
A Vancouver Canucks player is now being investigated by police after a woman went public with allegations of sexual misconduct. Vancouver police say they connected with the woman after learning about the allegations last weekend. The Canucks placed 24-year-old Jake Vertanen on leave and launched an independent investigation. No charges have been laid.
Today is Red Dress Day. Indigenous youth across the country are putting red dresses on public display to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
Important for us to come together on these days and really show the community, show our nation, show Turtle Island, that's North America, that we matter, that our women matter, that we're not going anywhere, that we refuse to live in fear, that we will be holding our government accountable.
A red dress was hung at the George Vancouver statue at City Hall today as a symbol of protest. In Victoria, supporters lined dresses, signs, and red ribbons on the steps of the legislature. Indigenous speakers told stories of their loved ones who went missing. They expressed grievances with the federal government's lack of transparency into the national inquiry, as well as law enforcement's negligence and mishandling of cases.
Johanna Wagstaffe here now with the forecast. A bear in downtown Vancouver, those cougars. Anything in your neck of the woods we should be concerned about? We know where you are there.
I know. Just alert me if you see anything, including a Bernese Mountain Dog. Yeah, literally, you should have my back on this one. Something else that I'm tracking that was also a little unexpected. Just a few stray showers in the past 20 minutes. The main event's still holding off, but it was muggy enough today, and I think we got some sea breeze convergence. Let me show you the radar right now. If you thought you felt a few drops across Metro Vancouver, you did. There's the radar. Very brief. You can see that general southwest to northeast flow. Very light. I think for the most part, that's it until tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, just a little bit of a precip event ahead of the main cold front. And there it is in the satellite right now, swirling off the coast of Haida Gwaii is the center of the low. And we've got that trailing cold front, which will move through tomorrow afternoon. Current temperature is about a 14 at YVR. So much cooler at the airport than we are inland, even downtown stations, Surrey, Tri-Cities, hitting the high teens, low 20s today. So a muggier day if you are away from the water. Temperatures tomorrow will be a little cooler. Here's the forecast afternoon highs. As we get into that cold front, get into some afternoon precip, we'll be down below our seasonal by a couple of degrees. But I'll take us through the timing of the rain. And Mike and Anita, I think we're close enough to the weekend now. We can really get into some deets.
Can't wait. Can't wait for those deets.
Weekend deets, love it.
It has long been a stain on the history of our province, the internment of thousands of Japanese Canadians during World War II. Now, a step toward righting those wrongs.
We need to acknowledge the province's historical role, and we need to honor the survivors, and we need to provide lasting recognition of these traumatic events.
The $2 million fund will develop and deliver health and wellness programs for the Nikkei seniors' health care. Nearly 22,000 Japanese Canadians were held in remote camps during the war.
Okay, bagpipes, you either love them or loathe them. But for one little boy in North Vancouver, it's become one of his biggest passions.
Doesn't your neighbor play the bagpipes all the time?
Yes, he does. With apologies to my neighbor, Owen.
The CBC's Kevin Lee introduces us both 4-year-old Frankie and his hero, Frank.
Little Frankie may only be 4.5 years old, but he already knows what his favorite day of the week is.
When Friday happens, Frank comes late soon, and I just really want to play with him, so that's why I act up like him.
I'd say it was probably last September. The Pink Piper walks down Lonsdale every Friday around 5 o'clock, 4:45, and he listened to him, and he's every Friday, he's there. Let's go, Frankie. Let's go. Frank's coming down.
What started off as a bit of a pep rally and parade for the healthcare workers last year became a weekly tradition along Lonsdale Avenue in North Vancouver.
Halfway through winter, dead of night, little Frankie appears in a hockey jacket with a hockey stick. But I could see his fingers moving and his foot was beating to the music, which was great.
Does it make music? And just when you play it, you do the hand like this. 1, 2, 3, 4.
It is a little random. We moved here to the North Shore like a year ago, and just even to hear somebody playing the bagpipes is quite random. And to go by our house, but he was so excited every day. Is it Friday? Is it Friday?
After Christmas there, we bought him the whole set, the whole outfit, and now he's part of the Friday thing. He marches down with Frank.
I'm really impressed that he's taken it on and he's loving it. I mean, Frankie will soon learn that people will pay him to stop playing.
Do you do Amazing Grace yet?
I did it, yes.
Yeah.
Kevin Lee, CBC News, Vancouver.
They're called being self-aware, I guess. They'll pay you to stop.
I don't know when you learned that, but...
Yes. Frank and Frankie. Well, I love the bagpipes, by the way. Fantastic.
I love it too. Very cute.
We won't ask either of them what's in their sporin, so you can look that up. Just a quick reminder, you can also watch this newscast live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Alberta is warning its healthcare system faces collapse tonight. How it plans to try to tackle the crisis just ahead.
Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. When kids in gym class hear they're playing dodgeball, many are terrified. But on PEI, they're trying a kinder, gentler version of the game called Gaga ball.
Yeah, it's played in something called a Gaga pit, which might sound more dangerous, but have a look.
The Gaga pit's a pit that is octagon shape, and basically you put 20 kids in it, and it's a smaller version of dodgeball. So the Gaga comes from the Hebrew term touch. So when the kids start the game, they go Gaga 3 times, and the game's on.
It's very competitive, and if you get hit waist below, you are out. You have to stand out of the Gaga pit until the round is over. If it hits your legs at any time, off the wall, off your hands, off of someone else's hands, you're out.
It is really fun getting people out because you know, like, you did something good, or like winning a game, and like you can do like alliances or like tell someone I'm not gonna get you out, and you can make a lot of new friends in the game too.
All the kids that are playing are in the same cohort, so they're interacting anyway, but they're in groups. So there's no, for example, there might be 3 classes in one cohort. They will play, and then we just switch the ball out next recess and put a new ball in, and then the next cohort would come in. So there's no cross contamination of cohorts, I guess.
Let's go!
Not all my friends like playing sports, so it's like a good game for everyone to try like sports, you know?
Even for the kids that don't like to play, there's a lot of kids watching. There may be another 20 to 30 outside the pit watching at one time and cheering everybody on.
It's a good use of time, and it's a really fun game. I feel like they liked it. Well, other schools it would be good for them to have it too.
It's just fun.
I don't know, it feels more dangerous to me.
Well, a little bit. I think you'd be good at either. Your, add your basketball acumen and your
I'm not good at dodgeball.
Oh. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan either, especially getting smoked in the head, during gym class. That's never a lot of...
You were always the guy getting smoked, never the one actually doing the smoking.
Sure, that was right. I was a victim always. Okay, coming back with more news, including the terrible situation in Alberta with their COVID situation. Right now it's 6:24, almost. Live look, BC Place, downtown Vancouver on this Wednesday evening.
Alberta is reporting just over 2,200 new COVID-19 cases today. It's the 5th time in a week they've seen numbers that high.
As Carolyn Dunn tells us tonight, MPs are holding an emergency debate right now.
Excuse me?
I'm in right now.
Early this morning, police and health authorities in Alberta cracked down on a repeat public health rule breaker.
How can any single one of you sleep at night with what you're doing right now?
Owner Chris Scott has defied multiple health and court orders to keep serving customers indoors.
Other business owners are following the law. You are not.
Today, enforcement officers locked his doors. A new multi-agency approach targeting those who refuse to comply, laid out at a news conference with the Premier and his ministers today.
This new enforcement protocol being put in place, plus my commitment to continue to work with the Health Ministry and Alberta Health Services to see how we can beef up and close any loophole that is out there.
Tougher enforcement, including doubling fines, comes after months of criticism Alberta has been soft on rule breakers. And with more than a dozen MLAs speaking out against health measures, sending mixed messages.
So we have ended up with this sort of polarized moment in Alberta happening at the worst possible time.
The new restrictions, born out of fear ICUs will soon be overwhelmed. Today, the Premier said that could happen in a month if the current COVID trajectory doesn't change.
We can manage the current load and what's coming at us, but not if the numbers continue to go up, particularly not if the growth of the spread of the virus accelerates.
Warning that wouldn't just impact COVID care, but anyone who needs medical services.
So I just encourage everybody to follow the science, follow the evidence, and follow the rules so that we can have a reasonable summer, so we can get everybody vaccinated and get those case numbers down so we can get out of this third wave and this pandemic as quickly as possible.
Carolyn Dunn reporting from Calgary tonight. Foreign ministers from the 7 wealthiest nations have wrapped up their 2-day summit in London.
They gathered to talk about a variety of issues, but as Tessa Arcilla reports, the aggressive spread of COVID-19 became the top priority.
It's their first face-to-face meeting in 2 years because of COVID. Foreign ministers of the G7 countries plus 4 guest nations were in London over the last 2 days to discuss a whole host of world issues. Topping that list, of course, is the global pandemic, including the devastating situation in India. And today, COVID struck that meeting. Word of 2 possible COVID positive cases among the delegation from India led the foreign minister of that country to conduct his bilateral meetings via video link instead of face-to-face. But the show continued today. The most important topic that they wanted to address is the issue of trying to get as many vaccines to as many places as possible, especially those that need them the most. Now, the unequal distribution is stark. Of all the vaccines administered so far globally, less than 1% have gone to low-income countries. The G7 nations here have agreed to support financially the global vaccine sharing program, COVAX, and ramp up the financial contribution of these countries.
We had a very good discussion on how the G7 can continue to support the multilateral response to COVID-19, particularly through the ACT Accelerator and the COVAX initiative. And I reminded our colleagues that Canada has provided $940 million to the ACTA, including $325 million for COVAX, making us the 4th largest contributor in the world.
This ministers' meeting and the joint statement they agreed upon sets the tone for the G7 Leaders Summit in June. Tessa Arcilla, CBC News, London.
Coming up, with a rash of deadly gun violence in Metro Vancouver, we sit down with someone who works directly with families involved in gang activity. What's happening and how will it stop?
Lean over, eyes open, she goes to grab, and I go like this. If she's going to fall, she's going to fall.
These women are nurses who all work on surgical wards not usually associated with violent patients. But they say at least once a week they find themselves in a dangerous situation.
And I pulled down and out.
I had a man who was confused and he pulled out his intravenous, so he was bleeding. And so I grabbed a pad and tried to put it over his hand to stop the bleeding. And he swung at me to take a punch at me.
My first reaction is to pull away.
This is how nurses in some hospitals in British Columbia are fighting back. This seminar at Vancouver General Hospital teaches nurses how to recognize potential violence in patients and how to defend themselves if they are attacked. If it seems drastic, consider this. Last year here at BC's largest hospital, security staff were called more than 700 times, nearly twice a day, to restrain out-of-control patients.
In a 4-year period, the number of nurses assaulted seriously enough to need time off work has doubled. Now every year, twice as many nurses as police officers make claims for assaults. It's becoming a major problem.
Do I have to kick you and punch you to tell you that I don't want this medication and leave me alone?
I appreciate that you're not kicking and punching me.
This nurse is demonstrating the kind of abuse she takes every day. Well, these seminars are designed to teach nurses how to get out of sticky situations with patients. Most nurses agree it's not enough. What's really needed, they say, is for the public to realize that a nurse's job is to provide care, not to take abuse.
Premier Glenn Clark vowed if the federal government couldn't get salmon treaty talks going again, British Columbia would take matters into its own hands. This morning, he delivered.
We are going to take action within our jurisdiction to try to get the Americans' attention to try to get a treaty.
That action was serving 90-day notice to Ottawa that British Columbia would revoke the seabed lease for the Nanoose Bay Naval Testing Site off Vancouver Island. The United States has saved more than $2 billion over the past 32 years testing torpedoes there, because the seabed makes it relatively simple to retrieve the torpedoes. Late this afternoon, a breakthrough.
There will be a resumption of negotiations on the Pacific Salmon Treaty Friday of next week.
Axworthy says it was diplomacy between Ottawa and Washington that led to the resumption, not Glenn Clark's Nanoose Bay threat. And in fact,
we can understand Premier Clark's frustration, but I think that we are now in a position to now negotiate again in good faith, and I hope some of the actions that he has initiated that he may reconsider.
But Clark says negotiations are not enough, because in a few weeks a record run of sockeye salmon is going to return to BC's Fraser River. It's expected to migrate through U.S. waters, and the BC Premier says if there's no treaty, there'll be no limit on the amount of salmon U.S. nets can scoop up. So Clark says it will take agreement on a new salmon treaty to persuade him to extend the lease at Nanoose Bay.
Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It is heart-wrenching for us to have to tell people that this won't happen because they do depend on us for that summertime employment.
More popular summer activities are now casualties of COVID-19. The PNE and Bard on the Beach, both canceled.
Health Canada this morning approved the Pfizer vaccine for use in young people aged 12 to 17. So I wanted to let people know that we are absolutely planning on integrating that into our program.
And Dr. Henry says that could happen before the school year ends. She says it shouldn't impact the plan to get first doses to everyone by the end of June and won't interfere with timelines for second doses.
A woman in her 20s is dead after being shot inside her Surrey townhome. A man in his 20s was arrested. Police say the suspect does have gang ties. The victim is not known to police.
It's very clear there is some sort of gang war happening in the Lower Mainland. In the last month, we've seen several shootings in very public places, often in the middle of the day. So what's happening here? Let's bring in Manpreet Sarai with the Archway In It Together anti-gang program in Abbotsford. She works with at-risk youth and families in South Asian and other immigrant communities. Thanks for joining us, Manpreet.
Thank you for having me.
Things have gotten very out of hand, and you've actually had an increase in calls from families wanting help. Tell me about that. Who are these families and what are they worried about?
Yes, so after reports of gang violence in the community or in neighboring communities, Our parents are very worried about their youth, whether their youth are involved in the gang activity or whether they're not. So if they are involved in the gang activity, the parents call worried that their son's going to be next. Whether this youth has buy-in to any of the programs that have been offered to them, or if they haven't, then these parents are very worried that their child is going to be next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing stories from the community right now, parents who say their kids come home, kids as young as, grade 8 and 9, their kids come home and ask if they know any gang members, because right now it's cool to know a gang member. It's pretty shocking. So what are you hearing from youth about what's going on right now and what this increase in activity is all about?
So the youth do like to talk about what's happening in the community, whether who's getting shot at or who's been shot at. Usually the youth know before anyone else finds out in the community. Rivalry and revenge, it starts really small with an argument or a disagreement, whether it has to do with a friend or girls. This is just in the high school kids. So it's escalating to fights, property damage, and more violence. And it's so important to know what's happening with our kids in the school, what's happening with them outside of school. If our kid is going and damaging someone else's property over a fight, we need to talk to them about it.
Many of the victims as of late, not all, but several, have been of South Asian background. And I want to be clear, we know this isn't just a South Asian problem, but I do want to hear about some of your specific observations about gang involvement in the community.
So with our South Asian youth, each of our youth that we work with have their own story of why they got involved. Whether it was a sense of belonging, identity, control, others seeking protection because they have been victims of violence. Also seeking connection because their parents are away working, sometimes days, sometimes weeks at a time. They have connections through their cousins and other generational gang members who are already involved in the gang lifestyle. We noticed that young South Asian males with developmental disabilities were also at risk of gang recruitment. There are many factors, the sense of belonging and wanting to fit in. Some of these youth did not get tested for their developmental disabilities until they hit middle school or high school. And by the time they got there, they were just trying to fit in with the rest of the youth. So due to that, the lack of support, whether it was emotional or academic, they started joining those different gangs just so that they could show that they were one of them and that they could fit in.
What's been the biggest challenge for you in trying to counsel and support these youth and families? What makes it hard to do?
Yeah, so the challenges are the understanding between the parents and the youth. The parents are more into the culture, the Canadian culture, and the parents are still adjusting to the ways of the Canadian culture, trying to get used to it. The parents want to give their youth everything that they didn't have back home, or whether it was when they first came to Canada. And that sometimes becomes a risk factor of just allowing your child to have everything that they want and not everything that they need.
Manpreet Sarai is a supervisor and gang prevention family educator from Abbotsford. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Well, it is going to break up and hit the Earth. Coming up, the anger over a wayward Chinese rocket.
At 6:37, you are looking at a live shot tonight. It's looking quite cloudy on the south coast, and the showers did hold off, although a few seconds there we had some rain. But they are coming back a little heavier. Joe will tell us when next.
Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I am going to show you how to exercise with different things from around the house. If you don't have weights, that's not a problem. We can use a whole load of different things. Eden's gonna be one of them. So we're gonna do a squat and press. This one is 30 pounds. Woohoo! Woohoo! I'm lunging to keep fit. Squeeze from the shoulders. 11 pounds with the lid, 7.5 pounds without the lid. Yay! Try not to hit yourself in the head, obviously. There you have it. How to use things from around your home, including Eden, for your exercise routine. See you next time. Bye.
Mommy, play.
Hi, hey, Mr. O, what you doing?
I'm reading a book, Arnold.
A book? That's one of my favorite things.
Of course it is. You never been to a library? There are so many books you might not know what to read.
There are lots of stories to discover. Pull one off the shelf and look inside the cover. We got books on fairies, whales, and bites. If you look hard enough, you'll find one you like.
Oh, yes.
There's so much to learn. There's so much to know.
So much to know.
When you give that page a turn, whether you read fast or slow, if you want a place to go,
read a book and your mind will grow.
If cool pictures are what you crave, try a picture book. It's all the rave.
Or maybe try a fairy tale or a fable.
Stories about unicorns are also on the table. Imagination, it's the powerhouse station. You can see the story and go on a bookcation.
Just turn the page. You can't go wrong. You could end up reading for a whole week long. Oh,
there's so much to learn. There's so much to know.
So much to know.
When you give that page a turn,
give it a turn.
Whether you read fast or slow, if you want a place to go,
read a book and your mind will grow.
China is building its own space station, which means big rockets carrying big payloads.
And a huge chunk of one of those rockets is now hurtling uncontrolled toward us.
And Briar Stewart shows us it's happening more often.
When the Chinese rocket blasted off last week, there was celebration. The launch was heralded as a success, putting a module into orbit for a new space station. But a large chunk of the rocket itself is out of control and plummeting to Earth.
They just left this rocket stage there going, yeah, I guess it's going to come down somewhere, but hopefully it won't hit anyone. It was just that casual, I think. So that's not acceptable in the 21st century is my feeling.
Often, space debris burns up upon re-entry, but experts say part of the Chinese rocket won't. The core of the Long March 5B model weighs roughly 20 tons. It's 5 meters wide and 32 meters long. It's currently hurtling at a speed of 28,000 kilometers an hour, orbiting Earth every 90 minutes. It's estimated that it will crash down around May 8th. The hope is it lands in the ocean. But last year, China launched the same rocket model. When it crashed, debris scattered across the Ivory Coast.
There's absolute liability if something comes from space and damages property or hurts somebody.
Security was very tight.
In 1978, when a satellite crashed, several pieces of radioactive debris were spread across Canada's north. The Soviet Union gave Canada $3 million in compensation. Experts say as more countries and companies put material into space, there will be more debris. Back in March, part of SpaceX Falcon rocket lit up the night sky, and a chunk was recovered on a farm in Washington.
As we expand our use of space, it has many promises, but space is also an environment, and we need to treat it as an environment if we're going to build it in a way that's both sustainable and safe for continued use.
As for the rocket, China is expected to launch several more as it works to build its space station. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now. Before we get to the forecast, Joe, Briar touched on it. There's been a lot of space junk. What is actually happening?
Yeah, there is a lot up there, 9,000 tons
of space junk is what is estimated. And it's not that uncommon to see them come down. In fact, those of us in southern BC will remember just over a month ago, we had a bit of a SpaceX rocket light up our sky. So they are common. That one, though, was just 2 tons. And this one, as we heard from Breyer, over 20 tons. So it's something that agencies are looking at more and more. And I was just checking. They're starting to hone in on the location and timing of the drop of that satellite. Looks like, or the rocket, I should say, this weekend and below the 41-degree latitude. So Canada is in the clear, but I'll keep you posted. Let's take a look at Canada's temperatures from coast to coast. We've got a 14 in through Vancouver, 19 out towards Kelowna. Pretty seasonal across the prairies today. A little chilly, though, in through the eastern half of the country. Just a 5 through Halifax right now, and Toronto seasonals normally up around the high teens, so it's been a chilly stretch this week for them as well. Here is our low pressure that will drop our temperatures for tomorrow. It's actually sliding northward, but the trailing cold front will move inland tomorrow afternoon. It'll make its way across the island. Victoria, you'll see those showers in the afternoon, and then Vancouver. This is sort of a 2 p.m. story for us, and it'll move right across the province. So everyone seeing some kind of shower activity over the next 24 hours. It's fast moving, and behind it, we get into a west to east flow as we head into the weekend. More on that in just a moment. Quick look at rainfall totals. We always need rain this time of the year. It's nice if it comes in small doses, as we're also managing our spring runoff. But yeah, fire danger is creeping up. So it's nice that we've got a nice 10 to 20 millimeters for coastal areas. And again, everyone's seen the showers in the afternoon, evening hours. Kelowna starting off with some sunshine, same story in through Kamloops. Quite mild, though, a good 3 to 5 degrees above seasonal with this southerly push ahead of that cold front. Cranbrook and up towards the Peace, you've got a break day tomorrow. The front won't get to you until the evening. Look at the temperatures, though, 28 tomorrow through Osoyoos, and then we come down behind that front quite dramatically for Friday, below seasonal for a couple of days. And I am watching the weekend closely. I mentioned we've got this yet again zonal flow, meaning west to east. So it's always hard to nail down the exact timing of showers. They sort of ride the flow. But I do think we'll see mainly sunny skies for Friday. It's Saturday, probably our best chance of showers, and then a mixed bag on Sunday. So all in all, something for everyone, Mike and Anita.
All right, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A member of the Vancouver Canucks is reflecting tonight on the COVID outbreak that swept through the team, how it hit him personally and how it impacted the Canucks season.
Zach McEwen talked to CBC PEI host Louise Martin. Here's how he describes the moment he found out he'd tested positive.
I was out walking my dog with my girlfriend whenever I got the call that said I tested positive. So immediately as soon as you hear that you're positive, your first reaction is you want to make sure you're protecting other people and doing the right, doing the right protocols to, keep people around you safe. So, immediately, put the mask on, got home right away and, started the isolation process and, just, wanted to sanitize everything around, the house and everything that we touched on the way back home. So, it was, definitely a little, when you first find out and you're feeling fine, you're kind of shocked and a little bit worried about, kind of what's to come or what's going to happen.
And so what did happen? How ill did you become?
Well, the first 2 days that I was positive, I had no symptoms. It kind of progressed a little bit more as time went on, where I was dealing with some stomach issues and still with the cold sweats and the fever and just an uncomfortable tiredness that that was kind of just tough to get out of bed or want to have the motivation to want to do anything and getting tired very easily. So I think my symptoms were manageable for sure. There was 1 or 2 days where I was really, really under the weather, but thankfully it just lasted those couple of days and I was able to, stay hydrated, lots of fluids and rest and try to get over that hump and then start recovering.
The NHL had the team trying to finish out the season, playing a number of games in a short amount of time. How much of a challenge has that been?
Yeah, it's a tough schedule we have here towards the end of the season. A lot of games to make up in a short time. But it's what we got to do. It's part of the job. So, we're going to grind through it right now and try to play the best hockey that we can.
I know teammate JT Miller has been quite outspoken against the return to play. What were your thoughts on that?
I think that was, the right thing to do. I think, at that time when, when we were supposed to come back, we were in the best of shape, and, we wouldn't have been able to field, a high level team like we usually are. So, I think him making that call was great for the guys, and those couple extra days that we got were really helpful.
All right. Well, Zach McEwen, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're doing well. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. Appreciate it.
And from battling COVID to battling each other, a slugfest at tonight's game between the Washington Capitals and New York Rangers.
It comes 2 days after Tom Wilson of the Capitals punched a player face down on the ice.
Mr. Jamie Strachan reports tonight it sparked another debate about player safety.
Here we go. It didn't take long. 6 fights in the first 5 minutes of tonight's Rangers-Capitals game. One, of course, involving Capitals star Tom Wilson. Retribution for this.
This is ridiculous. Panarin, what is Wilson doing?
Less than 48 hours ago, in a rapid sequence of violence, Wilson punched one Rangers player in the back of the head. When Rangers star Artemi Panarin intervened, Wilson wrestled off Panarin's helmet before wrestling him to the ice.
I don't honestly know where to start. It's just horrible. There's zero respect.
While pushing and shoving after the whistle in the NHL is common, what Wilson did is not, according to the Rangers head coach.
There are lines that can't be crossed in this game. There's just zero respect for the game in general. And, you got one of the star players in this league now who could have got seriously hurt.
It's how the NHL handled the incident that has further angered players and fans. Wilson was given a $5,000 fine and not suspended.
I just think it's a joke, to be honest with you. I know it's not my responsibility to make decisions, but I just can't believe that. I think it sends a bad message.
Back at Sundquist.
Wilson is a repeat offender, suspended 5 times. The Rangers issued an unprecedented statement saying they are extremely disappointed and called for the NHL's head of player safety to step down. The whole incident has spawned a conversation about player safety in the league.
What does the NHL do to protect its stars or promote its stars?
This insider says the NHL is walking a fine line in its handling of Wilson.
I think that's really the bigger question the league should be asking now is, are we doing enough to protect our stars? And I think a lot of fans and a lot of players would say the answer right there is no.
Judging by tonight's game, if the league won't step in, players will seek their own payback. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, knowing their home was up for demolition, the tenants decided to, well, have a bit of fun. The little problem with their plan coming up.
What Dan Sparks is about to do is becoming more and more rare. He's got a new listing in a market that is seeing a surge.
Sales are up, the inventory is down, sales prices are up.
The number of houses for sale here is down to about 100. Based on sales, that means there's a 1-month supply. What that means is that it's a seller's market. There have been multiple offers, properties selling over list.
There was an opportunity to cash out of the marketplace.
Kelly McMillan's clients accepted an offer for this 2-bedroom hotel condo for $650,000. That's $300,000 more than what they paid just 4 years ago.
In this case, luckily, they're very happy.
This house was listed on a Thursday. 11 offers were made over the next 2.5 days. The winning bid came in over the $1.1 million list price, and it included a letter and a family photo from the buyer.
Well, the big driving force, honestly, comes down to COVID fatigue.
The pandemic has spurred interest from people who can work from anywhere, and some are choosing this mountain town.
Calgary, Edmonton, people there who've been stuck at home for over a year looking to make a change.
The Alberta Real Estate Association says the benchmark price for a typical home is almost $1.1 million. Condos are just over $500,000. It's a concern in a community already struggling to provide affordable options.
The COVID effect has been terrible in regards to affordability of housing in Canmore.
The mayor says it's discouraging for younger people who want to stay and raise a family.
We've been bleeding the next generation like that for years.
The town has started work on a 10-unit townhouse project that will offer below market rates, but there are 150 people on the waiting list. The town recently said it wants to see more affordable housing units in the next phase of the Three Sisters Mountain Village. And it's trying to make it easier for homeowners to build or legalize secondary suites in existing neighborhoods.
Not only encouraging suites now.
This real estate agent and builder put in a one-bedroom suite in this $1.4 million duplex that's already been sold. Dale Hildebrand's next project includes more than a dozen townhomes that will offer employee housing, something that's desperately needed here.
They could put their employees in there and rent them out to their employees at a subsidized rate.
A plan he feels would be a welcome addition in a community struggling to accommodate everyone.
If we don't do something to ensure affordable housing is a big part of our future, the town will become, well, it will only be a place for the very wealthy.
Brian Labby, CBC News, Canmore.
Hi, I'm Amy Bao, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC Vancouver is a proud returning sponsor of the 20th annual Doxa Documentary Film Festival. Get your tickets and watch amazing films from the comfort of your own home, May 6th to 16th. Learn more at doxafestival.ca. And the CBC News Vancouver team wants to see your beautiful photos of beautiful British Columbia. Email your photos to bcphotos@cbc.ca for your chance to be featured.
Okay, if you've had a stroll through a residential neighborhood recently, you might have come across a decorative animal or two.
But it's a pretty safe bet that you'd give a stone goose a second look if it was wearing clothing, particularly the designer duds created by a southwestern Ontario woman.
Here's what she does and how she got started.
They're cute. They're cute and they make a statement. Well, it started because my husband died in '99. I needed extra income. I lived right by Shipshewana in Indiana. So I started making, I seen them in the 80s. Like we have the bumblebees, we have the St. Patties, we have the hockey players, we have butterflies, we have dresses for each occasion. We've done clowns, we've done firefighters. Anytime somebody asks for something, we just do it. Oh my gosh, this year it was 15 of the leprechauns. I was sick of making leprechauns. I have filing cabinets full of, you know, their little hats, their cups, their bows, their stakes, whatever. I mean, my whole upstairs is just covered in this crap. And they don't care what price you put on them, they want it. I've had some that they paid $75 for because it's got like rabbit furs, stuff like this.
We sold them, I fixed them, I repaint the geese. I'm the maintenance man here. As you can see, I cut that out, put that up on the house.
See people's faces, to see some of the kids' faces when they have them. I've got people that still send me, oh, look at my goose, I got your costume on, you know. It's just something joyful, especially during COVID.
Well, it is different, we'll give her that.
Might have to order a CBC-themed goose.
Yes, and I would suggest the fittings, if these were real geese, might be a bit of a challenge, so stick with the stone geese for the time.
It's a good idea. All right, an ordinary-looking East Vancouver home slated for demolition has become more colorful of late.
Yeah, well, it doesn't look good.
No. And graffiti on this house in the Hastings Sunrise neighborhood appeared this weekend. By all accounts, it's the result of a rowdy moving out party held by the renters.
The homeowners say the spray paint may have come from a misunderstanding about the looming demolition. They say they've paid for a demolition permit, but a backlog at the city suggests the wrecking ball likely won't come for at least 7 weeks.
And the owners have now asked the former tenants to help painting the house in the meantime.
Yeah.
Timing was a little bit off. The intention offside, the timing though, yeah.
And no rowdy parties right now. What's going on?
Oh, you raise another good point. Maybe a COVID restrictions violation. More to this story. All right, that's all the time we have tonight. You can always watch our newscast online anytime at cbc.ca/BC.
Next local news right here at 11 o'clock after the National. That's with Dan Burrett. Have a good night.
Good night.